What is an HSP anyway? Otherwise known as a highly sensitive person. Since about 20 to 30% of the world's population are HSPs, you may be wondering if you're an HSP. That's about 2 billion people. So chances are, if you're watching this, you could be a highly sensitive person. Let's find out. Hi, I'm Ashton, HSP psychotherapist, HSP myself, and helping other HSPs live a life they love. So if you're a highly sensitive person, you know it. You may not know that it's called an HSP or being a highly sensitive person, but you know that you're different. Sometimes in your life, you may have felt like you have a superpower. Other times in your life, you may have felt like there's something wrong with you. And certainly when we're growing up, we can be sent messages that there's something wrong with us, unless we have a parent who is an HSP or is educated in the trait or is a highly conscious or thoughtful parent, wanting to really understand the children or her child better. I know when I was a child, my mom often called me too much or difficult, or as I got a little bit older, I was called high maintenance because our needs as an HSP are typically greater than the needs of a person who doesn't have the traits. The trait is called sensory processing sensitivity, and that is a term that Dr. Elaine Aron coined to describe the trait, to describe being a highly sensitive person. It's something that we're born with. There's nothing that's wrong with you. It's a trait. It is often genetic, meaning your parents can be a highly sensitive person. And it means that your brain is wired differently. And another term for that is called neurodivergent. Again, nothing wrong with you. It just means we are wired differently. And Dr. Elaine Aron coined that anacronym DOES, DOES, to describe what it really means to have this trait of sensory processing sensitivity. So I just want to tell you what that means. D stands for depth of processing, and that just means that we process information deeply. We're deep thinkers. We think a lot, and sometimes that can be exhausting. We also think about things often or typically on a deeper level than people who don't have the traits. So that can look like in your everyday life, not really being interested in small talk or things that are more on the superficial level or surface level. We like to kind of go underneath, go deeper. So that's D. O stands for overstimulation. That's the part that most of us are very much aware of until we really start to understand the trait. We can be very overstimulated from all of the information that's coming into our nervous systems. I like to think of HSPs as having like 100 antennas, and depending where you are on the sensitivity scale, like myself, I probably have about 1,000 antennas. And if you are non-HSP or you don't have the trait, then you often have about maybe say 10. Not one is not better than the other or worse than the other. We need both kinds of people in the world. And species as well. There are about 100 species that we've discovered so far that have the traits. Pretty cool, including dogs and cats, if you happen to have a dog or a cat, and some fish. Let's see. So that's O for overstimulation. And then E stands for empathy or emotional reactivity or responsiveness. And what that means is that HSPs have a high capacity for empathy, for really caring deeply. And that's due to the differences in our brain. Brain function, particularly a part of the brain called the insula. We also can feel things really deeply. And so that's where the emotional responsiveness or reactivity, if you are a non-trained HSP, meaning you haven't really learned the tools or really engaged in self-care, you can become more reactive or be more reactive. If you have worked on yourself over the years, then we would say more emotionally responsive. Like you still feel things really deeply, but you don't have to react. So for me, example, I don't watch violent movies. Um, Anything that's really loud or jarring to my nervous system, well, that probably falls more in the overstimulation. So I'll give you a story about this morning. Actually, there's this little spider that has been hanging on to my side view mirror, and he hung on the whole way when I went to pick up my 6-year-old at camp and the whole way back. And I was like, wow, great. And I showed my daughter, and she was like, okay. So we were rooting for him. We were really emotionally invested whether this little spider was going to make it. And then this morning we got back in the car to go to camp, and my daughter, who's also an HSP, said, Mom, do you think he's going to make it to camp today? And I said, you know what, honey, I don't know. Maybe we'll just give him the best shot and take him off the side view mirror and put him on the bush with the other spiders. And so that's what I did. I got out of the car, and I'm not a fan of spiders. Try to say that fast. A fan of spiders. And, so that's not really something that I was excited to do. And yet that emotional empathy or emotional responsiveness, I really didn't want to think of the spider being killed or hurt. So anyway, I put him in the bush. So that's E. And S stands for sensing the subtleties. And this is where often you can feel like you have a superpower, right? It's that when you walk into the room and you notice things that other people don't notice. Maybe the vibe right away, or you can notice that maybe the food, if you're at a party or something, you can tell that there's no heating element underneath the spring rolls and they're going to be cold soon. We just really have this capacity to notice things that other people don't notice. So that's the S. And remember, it's DOES, does. So I think that pretty much gives you what an HSP is in a nutshell, or a highly sensitive person. So if you think you might be a highly sensitive person, feel free to check out my link below that gives you 5 free tools how to reduce your anxiety, bust shame, and claim your sensitivity as your greatest asset. And remember, when you understand your sensitivity, you too can claim it as your greatest asset.